Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Live! Welcome back to episode 192 on Real Men Real Talk Live this week. Viewers, as you take a moment to jump in and spend an hour or so with us on the program, I'd like to take a moment here to introduce our special guest, Pierce Ahmen, coming in not only on today, but today is a very special day in this beautiful man's life. It is his birthday. So, viewers, let's light up
Thank
the
you.
airwaves tonight. Let's drop happy birthday singing songs into the comment section. How does it feel to turn 47 today, Pierce?
I'm feeling pretty refreshed and alive. Yeah, I'm feeling like I am aging less and getting more wise sooner. So,
Okay. Well,
for me, as long as I maintain my joy, I'm not going to get old that fast. For
so
me,
how do you reverse the aging process? At least the physical part. Have you figured that out yet?
well, I mean, there could be countless ways. I think don't go to the grocery store for the first. Stay away from the house or the grocery store. But
Okay.
for me, it's more keeping my nervous system relaxed and staying in my essence, staying in my joy, staying in my playfulness and my wonder, my curiosity about life and people. That's where the magic is for me.
Beautiful.
So,
Well, welcome to Real Men Real Talk Live tonight.
Thank you.
It is an honor to have you here this evening. And as we wait a few moments here for more viewers to jump in, I want to introduce my co-host, our co-host this evening, Kaimalu, joining us this evening. Welcome back, Kaimalu.
Always a pleasure, Jay.
And we have Mr. Chris Morrison joining us as well. Welcome back, Chris Morrison.
Thank you. Good to see you, brothers.
So tonight's episode, when Pierce joined us in our production meeting on Sunday evening, and usually when we have a special guest join us, we invite the guests to pick the topic that's close to their heart. And so Pierce landed on a topic on fathers and sons. And the subtitle is, Dad, are you listening?
Yeah.
And so, Pierce, being that you're on the top shelf, you're our guest. We want to invite you to, as being in a hot seat, to kick us off, light us up, get us hot, and tell us why this topic was one that you wanted to dive into tonight around fathers and sons. And Dad, are you listening to me? Are you hearing me? What does that mean in your life?
Well, if we're talking about my dad, listening to him meant do as I say, not as I do.
Ooh, yeah.
So I never listened to him. And now I get paid lots of money to listen to other people. Listening is often, it comes in the form of control. We think that when someone's not listening, they're not responding the way we want them to. And so to me, and my relationship with my dad, and why it was so important is because his passing a couple of years ago, even though the relationship was quite abusive and just filled with shame and criticism and all of his stuff coming down onto me, I kind of knew at a young age I was here to break the mold and break the tradition and find my own way. And the men I saw in my life, those weren't the men I wanted to become. And so for my dad, I'm still working through some of that. I can still hear his inner voice criticizing me. I was at dinner last week and I'm reaching for the salt and I hear his inner voice criticize me. And I'm listening to the people I'm with and I'm hearing my dad in all of them. And I knew, wow, my wound is up. I still got some things to clear with my dad that even 2 years after he died, the things he said to me in childhood have become my inner voice still. And that's the power of communicating to your child, is that what you repeatedly say to them becomes their inner voice. And they may not even know that. They may just think they're a critical person. So my authenticity got robbed in the relationship because he tended to only see things his way. And his way was always right. And there was no possibility for anything else to exist other than his point of view. And so that made it very difficult to, be in an authentic relationship. And so there was just this, I would just go into shutdown when I was around him because it was safer to do that. And so my life became about, well, how do I express myself freely and fully? Having grown up with somebody I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around.
Did that ever get you in trouble? Meaning, not with your dad, but when you gave yourself permission or freedom to be just that, to speak your truth, did you find that it at times got you in trouble?
Sure. It came out very sarcastically. Sometimes it came out with a lot of anger.
Yeah,
that
was the kind of
myself. Yeah.
Meaning, I knew that was going to be the answer.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't done this before, but I'm going to do it tonight. Pierce, it would be an honor for me to do some work with you.
Sure.
3 hours, man. And my intention would be to set you free, to cut the cords to your dad so that you're not picking up that salt shaker and still hearing it come through.
Yeah.
And or when you do hear it come through, it'll come through with a very different energy for you moving forward. So I'm just putting it out there. When you're ready, let's do some fun work together, and I'll bring you home, man. That's my intent.
What an awesome gift on my birthday, knowing that just the other day, I'm moving through this. I'm like, wow, it's a really powerful story. Because I don't know that, when men come through my program, one of the questions I ask them is, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to have family? And when they get to the father part, they all write down, to be at home, to make money, to provide a home, make sure the kids have activities, make sure they're cared for. It's a bunch of action steps. And thousands of men who have filled out this questionnaire, not one of them says to be a father means to love or to be authentic or to be vulnerable or to be intimate or to heal myself. The state of being in fatherhood is what's missing. We've got the action part down. And so when men go through this process with me, it's like, wow, they're just doing what they know and what's been done, or they're trying to be the father they think they're supposed to be, rather than look at, well, fatherhood is how I relate to myself and how I treat myself. That's the kind of father I'm going to become. And that's what's going to show up with my child. And so one of the things that I also did was in one of my programs, Warrior Dad, when guys would come in, I would say, look, how do you see your kid? We spend a lot of time in relationships, but do we really know how the other person sees us and experiences us? And when their teenagers came in, because they wanted their kids to go through this program, I asked them, I said, so what is it like being a teenager? So I wanted to see their model of the world. What is it like being a teen on the inside? And they enlightened me about what it's like being a teen. And I said, does your dad know any of this? And almost all of them said no. And I said, that's fascinating, because to be in a relationship and not know what's going on, how somebody sees themselves, how they see themselves as a teenager in the world, makes it really difficult to know how to work with them. And then I said, what's the biggest complaint you have about your dad? And they all said, we're not allowed to complain. I said, wow. Do you know a complaint's an unspoken request? It's what we do when we don't know how to ask for what we need. And the second complaint was, Dad tells me what to do, but half of what he says, he doesn't do himself.
Oh, there you go.
So
that's that do as I say,
right.
not as I do, which is what I grew up. That was my dad as well.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah,
I felt it. If I didn't hear it, I definitely felt it.
Right. Well, and so I'm all about turning it inside now to be in the experience of what it's like to ask somebody, like, what is it like being my son? What is it like being married to me? Because you're going to get the experience, how they see you, and the level of learning and understanding, and why problems show up, and the level of intimacy. Do we really know how the other person sees us and experiences us that we're in relationships with? Because that reveals, that's what's going to show up in your relationship. And so to me, that's being authentic. And my dad and I didn't get to do that.
Well, there's an opportunity for you to do that with your dad on the other side. And I share that with you because that was when my relationship with my dad really pivoted. was when my dad transitioned, coming up on 9 years ago. And I have a different relationship with my father today than I ever did. But before I get into that, I want to invite you, Chris Morrison. What are you hearing? What have you heard so far between what Pierce has shared and a bit of what I've shared as well?
I really liked what Pierce was saying about all the doing, right? Like so many guys get stuck in the doing of their lives and they don't really have a definition of who they're being, right? And that shows through in just so many different aspects from, I mean, how they show up at work, how they show up with their kids, how they show up with their partners, and they don't really have a good construct of that. So yeah, that's what it was just kind of coming through, and it's just like then I was just playing kind of in my head, my state of being with my kids, and then the listening to them, right? Like truly, I just was kind of doing a checklist in my mind, right? Of how do I interact with my kids, right? How am I making sure that I break this mold? Um, I guess maybe not mold for me, right? Because I'm just making it up, right? Because I didn't have any father figure, right? They were, 'cause my dad was non-existent in my life. So, and then the adoptive father I had died. So, right. So I didn't like, I'm out here just winging it, right? I'm just hodgepodging it together as I go along. And so currently, right, like this is a big part of my adjustment in my life. And so it was, yeah, just trying to make that checklist, like, listening with intention.
Okay. I
Right.
do want to take a moment here just to also acknowledge you in this moment, Chris. As you just shared what you shared, the truth is you have a book coming out.
Yes, I do.
You are now an official author. And
Yes.
what is that book about?
States of being for your children.
Oh, wow. Wow. You're the
Here,
man.
Oliver, can you hand me my backpack there, bud?
You want to hear something funny? I wrote this book, Superhero Dads, how
Yeah.
single dads become that way. And I forgot I even wrote it 2 years ago. It was on the floor of the closet today.
Wow.
Yeah. But what you just said was profound because our whole world is run by action, action, action
That won't come through.
without showing up. We go through the actions, we go through the motions, but are we really bringing ourselves to the moment and to the action? And I don't see it as a bad thing that you were fatherless twice, because there's not a whole lot for you to undo. You now get to be authentic because they didn't have a whole lot of downloading into you. So I don't know that you're winging it. You just don't have to unpack it all.
Yeah, no, now that I've met my biological father, I know that I am blessed that he wasn't a figure in my life. Because the two sons that he did raise, I would not want to present in the way that they do. I feel like it's just the yeah, like you said, unpack, right? The amount of damage that was done there that they would have to unpack to just get back to even. I would rather take the absence aspect, and I got the fairer of the side of that side of the stick. So
yeah,
I got it. Kaimalo, what are you making of what you're hearing so far tonight? Dad, are you listening?
Well, it's really interesting, yeah, because the conventional father figure in Western society is not what I had growing up. Like for me, my mom was the breadwinner of the family. My dad was a stay-at-home parent. So in many ways, like my very early programming came from my dad. And yeah, I would say my experience of family and fathers is slightly different from the norm because just because of that dynamic, like that dynamic played out in their relationship too, where my mom was kind of the more aggressive figure in the house and my dad was maybe a little more passive. So I feel like there's like there's certain things in my programming around masculinity that I think are very different, in terms of, like, for me, I feel okay with being soft and being the at-home parent and like that kind of stuff. And I think I get a lot of that from my dad. Whereas like the go-getter doesn't necessarily resonate with the masculine energy for me. There was something Pierce said too that I really liked when he was talking about the salt shaker. And that was that he noticed his dad's criticism come back as opposed to his own. And I think that's a really clear distinction to make, and a really crucial distinction to make, because all of those beliefs, wherever they come from, parents, teachers, friends, if they're not encouraging us, they're not ours. And I think that's the first level of realization that we need in order to let them go. Is like, that's not mine. I don't need to hold that anymore.
Brilliant. I love that, Kamalo. I think you make a really valid point. Is it's just brilliant that we carry and we hold on to so much package, so much packed in that luggage. It's not ours. And I think what we can do as men, especially, and women too, is really begin to really question, is this mine? Why am I owning it? Why am I carrying it? Why am I guarding it like it's mine? When in fact, it most likely didn't serve your parent, and it's not going to serve you. So why do we continue to hold on to it? And I think a large part of this journey of growing up as men is really slowing down enough to truly become more aware of what we're hearing, what we're feeling, the spoken and the unspoken words that come through us as the son, as the father, as the friend, as a sibling, as a mate. And we get to choose how we want to feel, how we want to be perceived, how we want to engage in relationships. And because if we don't, we're just sleepwalking through life. And I use that term on occasion, sleepwalking, because that's how so many of us are living.
Mhm.
We're living to die instead of dying to live. And for me, that became very apparent about 9 years ago when I realized that although I had success in my life, I was not at peace. I was not calm. I was not okay. And that journey that I stepped into was the one of what I call the awakening of uncovering and discovering the true essence of who I am, not who I had become as the child of my mom and dad. And through that journey, gentlemen, I will share with you is that for the first time in my life, I'm free. And part of that journey was first learning how to forgive myself for the choices that I made in my life, in my adulthood, in all of my relationships. And then learning through that process how to forgive other people that are important in my life, people that I want to be free of their pain. And so that's why I chose to wear this shirt at the last moment tonight. I haven't worn this one in a long time, but I thought it was appropriate for tonight's topic on Dad, Are You Listening? Because we have the opportunity to also forgive our fathers. Wow.
Whew, I felt that one.
Until we forgive our own fathers, we will not be free. We could run, we could hide, we could isolate, we could get high. We could do whatever it is we want to do to distract ourselves, but deep within the body temple, we're holding on to all of their stuff. And it's time to set ourselves free through forgiveness. And for me, the gateway to forgiveness for my father specifically was around understanding this truth was that my dad did the best he could with what he didn't know. You thought I was going to say based on what he knew. It's less about what we know and it's more about what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And when you're that child growing up in that home with a parent that is a strict disciplinarian and believes they're training us to grow up and be responsible, respectful adults, and the impact it has on our life, it's profound. And some of us never overcome that. So I'm curious, Pierce, what is your relationship with forgiveness today? And where are you at with it?
I'm smack dab stuck in the middle of not forgiving myself. Like that's where I'm at with it.
I was not expecting that.
Because the story I've been running about him, in one sense, has made me incredibly successful out of revenge against him.
Say that again. I want to hear that a second time. So do our viewers.
The story I'm running about my dad has made me incredibly successful to seek revenge on all his criticism and shame. So I'll tell you, when I was when he passed away and I did the sermon, I was literally out of good things to say about him after 2 minutes. And then I had people stand up, and his friends stood up that he worked with. And they said, your dad was funny, and he was caring and give his shirt off his back for you. And he was always nice and willing to help. And I'm like, are you all at the wrong funeral? That's not how he showed up at home.
Yeah.
And then I realized that my story kept me from seeing dad as a whole. Yeah, I'm sure he was that way. But at home, I was his burden. He could fail as a father. So he couldn't enjoy himself, carrying all the responsibility and the burden. When he's with his friends, he was different. And I noticed that throughout, his life. He was always different at work and at home. And it was always serious and intense because he has to protect and provide. And with that comes the risk of I might fail. And so I never got to see that part of him with me.
Did you ever play sports with your dad? Any sports at all? Did that trickle out a little bit or trickle in?
By the time I was 20, I had over 100 trophies. And so he got to ride along and be a coach, which he knew nothing about coaching, because I was the star. But therein, playing sports was my outlet, was my self-expression out of, the shame and the abuse. And so the amount of pressure he put on me, which he didn't really need to do, I was already somebody that had a great work ethic, especially in sports. I would play all year round. But the amount of approval, and this is really where the criticism started showing up. I would pitch a perfect game, and he would thank everybody but me. And so in my mind, I'm like, I got to pitch another perfect game. So I pitched 2 perfect games in a row. And after the third one, I started to correct myself and mistrust myself and change my swing and change my pitches over and over and over again because it's not enough for this guy. And so that's where that mask came on. I got to be perfect in order to avoid his criticism. And even if I am perfect, I'm still not going to get the validation that I need. And so that level of pain, what do I got to be in order to get this man to see me? And so part of my dad's listening for the world is wrong. It never works out. It's just always wrong. So he focused on everything that was wrong. And after a while, that's what I started doing with myself in my career and then in my marriage. And I'm still doing it from time to time now. So it's that constant unraveling of just let it be what it is, let it be okay, and trust that it's all good. So yeah, it's a really powerful listening to constantly have to protect or guard myself. Even when I'm showing up fully and things are working, he'll find the one thing that didn't work. And then we get stuck on that. And that becomes, the norm. It could have gone wrong. even when everything went right, it could have gone wrong. And we get stuck on it could have gone wrong. And so, yeah, after a while, it was just like never enough.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've got to, it's a balancing act of, oh, I'm not trusting myself, which is actually one of my most profound gifts, is the level that I do trust myself. And up in the past 2 weeks, you know, my marketing, my PR agent called me Sunday and he's like, you're holding back, you're doubting. I haven't seen you like this. You're mistrusting yourself. You've got to heal your dad issue. And so even my marketing team knew. So I'm like, I couldn't figure out why is this coming up now? And it's like, well, I'm about to launch to a new level. And so here's another level of this pattern.
There you go. The reason I asked about if you ever experienced playing a sport with your dad, I meant not where he was a coach, but where you literally were on a court with him. I brought that up because I was able to relate to what you shared. In my younger years, growing up in the suburbs of New York, in the New York metro, at the time, handball, when I was really young, handball was a big sport. And my dad introduced me to the sport. And then he introduced me to racquetball. And I got to experience being on a court with my dad, seeing him play a sport with a friend or two of his, not mine. And I got to see a side of him, like you, Pierce, that I never got to see at home.
Yeah.
On most occasions. It was a different part of my dad. And I've talked about that a few times in the past. But for me, today, what I now understand, I didn't understand it then because I just saw my dad in a different light. But it just struck me less than a year ago that what I got to witness with my father is something that I don't believe he had a consciousness around. Was that when he was in play, his inner child was out playing. I got to meet his 8-year-old, his 12-year-old, his 15-year-old kid on the court. What a gift. I didn't know it then because I hadn't started on my own personal journey.
Right.
And like I said, it was less than 4 months ago where it really struck me like, wow, I got to see a part of my father that he's not even, probably was not even consciously aware of, that was showing up in that moment. I received a gift. Now I get to acknowledge that gift with my father when I want to have a conversation with him. Not on the telephone because he's not here,
Right.
but on the other side, my dad transitioned, as I've shared. But
Yeah.
these are the things that are important, is to really try to recapture some moments when we were able to experience a parent, if we had that parent in our life, in our childhood. Kamalu, I want to invite you to bring us into this next segment here, which is about how can we navigate and create healthy vulnerability between us as the son and our fathers. I know your dad watched last week's episode or 2 weeks ago on boundaries, and you shared in it. I think it kind of caught his eye, caught his ear, it kind of captured him. And there's some opportunities for some healing probably to take place from that. But I'm curious, from your perspective as the son, how do you think you can create healthy vulnerability between you as your father's son, with him still being alive and in your life, and someone that you want to have in your life because you love your dad?
Yeah, I do. I love him a lot. The thing that I continuously heard when my dad was coming to town and when my mom was coming to town, because she was just here too. So many people expressed to me not to put them on the pedestal anymore, and instead, as best as I could, to be present with them just as another soul, just like me, just another human, and see them in that light instead of through this lens of expectation and role playing and who they're supposed to be as the parent and who I'm supposed to be as the son. And that was really hard for me. I struggled to play a different role on my side. And I didn't really communicate how I was feeling with my dad while he was here. And then I expressed it on the show last week, and he heard it there before he heard it from me directly in a conversation. And that didn't feel pono, that didn't feel righteous to me, for him to receive it that way. And I do trust that that's, people gave me some perspective shifts on that. Maybe that was a better way for him to hear it, because in a moment with the two of us together, it could have been too charged. There's time and space for him to reflect without having to engage with me directly, and for me as well. But that question you asked, Jay, is something I'm figuring out now, is how to be vulnerable with my dad or my mom in the moment and actually invite that healing in, because I think I kind of avoided it and then expressed it, and it got to him in this backwards way.
Are you being vulnerable right now?
I think that hesitation suggests not entirely.
But are you?
Speak your truth, brother.
My truth is I don't know what to say to my dad yet.
Cool.
I don't know what I really want to say. He texted me. I don't totally know how to respond to it. I don't even totally know how to accept everything I heard in that message. He didn't seem angry, but he seemed very hurt. And that was the dynamic growing up from my perspective, was dad's in an abusive relationship. How do I make his life easier? And I still see my dad having a lot of trauma and pain around that relationship. And I saw my dad's inner child a lot come out and play with me when I was a little kid. And I missed that part of my dad. And I did get to see pieces of it while he was here too. But I've seen a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, and how that really shifted my experience of my dad. And like wanting to hold space and be there for him, and also simultaneously having this like anger and resentment that he wasn't there to do that for me. Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks.
So here's what I'm hearing is that once a man gets to, I don't know how, now you're being vulnerable. Because your mind's out of answers and how-tos and ways to do it. There isn't a how-to. You have to drop out of your head. That's the vulnerability. It's dropping out of the head. I got nothing. I'm vulnerable. Because men have to know it all. So once we don't know it all, we got nothing. We're vulnerable. And so there's a couple of things going on here, is that you got some withheld communication. He doesn't really know how you feel. And so that's the space you're holding. The other thing I heard is that it's hard to have compassion for him when you're not in a space of revealing the hurt and the anger that you have inside of you about it.
Yeah.
And so what gets to show up is you being responsible for your feelings and the withhold of them, because it could also transform him. You going to that place of vulnerability and revealing what's going on inside of you gives him permission to do the same. And if he's been traumatized and he's also suppressed, he doesn't know how to process it either. So there's a huge win-win here.
Yep.
And yes, like my dad should have been the one to say I love you before he died. I said it. doesn't have to work that way. You get to be the leader. When I called my coach and said, why do I have to be the first one? He's like, because you signed up for leadership when you came back to this planet this time.
Yeah.
Like, why are you surprised, man?
Yeah. Chris, what are you making of all this? What are you hearing, brother?
That last word, just that last comment about being the first. You know, as my dad's been off in addiction, you know, and from what I've heard, he's doing better. Right. Somebody in active addiction, I don't have any place for him. I just can't. It's just not something I can do. And I'm okay with, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I find peace in that. But now that I've heard that he's doing better on that stuff, like I've been waiting for him to reach out to me and kind of make that first move. And if one of my declarations is that I am a leader wherever I am, that's not true, right? In that instance, I am not being that leader. And so it's just interesting how, you know, knowing who I declare myself to be so clearly highlights when I'm not, right? Because that just one word right there was like, that does not align with who you say you are. And so it's really cool for me when these things pop up, because it's so black and white for me. It's just in my face. It's so loud that it's makes it really, really simple. As you say, right? Simple, not easy, right? Like the thought of reaching out to him to be like, hey, why don't we set up some time for me to come out and see you? I have zero desire to do that. But if I am the creator of my experience and I am going to step into leadership every single place I can, because that's who I am, then it's pretty fucking simple. So.
You got it, man.
Well said. Well said. I'm curious. The action or the lack of action doesn't necessarily mean you're not leading. If you don't have the desire, you don't have the desire. But what is your intention? It can't just be, hey, let's meet and see each other. What is the intention of you reaching out to him?
Basically, what I'm hearing you say, Pierce, if I may, is go in with the intention, have a clear, at least a roadmap as to what it is that, how you want to show up, what it is that you want to convey, communicate, and what is that you would like to see on the back end of that. Whether or not that's possible is always open for debate, because we don't know how he's going to show up, or whomever that individual is that you're ready to have that conversation with. In your scenario, Chris, it's a little different because he's not been in your life due to the circumstances. But I just also want to reiterate to you that you have a gift, and the gift is that you're a dad today, and you get to pay attention to how you're showing up for your sons, for your children, for your son and daughter. You get to show up and ask yourself, am I listening? How am I communicating and connecting with my children? Am I providing a safe environment for them to become their authentic self, to be their authentic self? Without fear of retribution from you, criticizing them or being pissed off at them, or it's such a beautiful opportunity when we get to do this as a man that's on the spiritual journey of yours. It's a gift. It's not something to run away from. It's not something to fear.
Well, it can be confronting. I'm just curious. Do you feel confronted by this?
No, not with these group of guys. Like, you know, there's just conversation and exploration and.
Oh no, meaning reaching out to your dad. Are you confronted by something?
No, because I mean, really, I could do with or without. I don't like. It's just, you know, there was one point in time He did show up for me in my life in a really beautiful way before he got into his addiction. And I would love to see if that version of him is still there. Because of course, right? There's always going to be some part of little Chris that wants to have a relationship with his dad. And I'm always, open to seeing if that's a possibility. And if it's not, okay,
Mm.
moving on. But if it is, then cool.
Yeah.
Let's see if that's where that goes. But I mean, but still, it's always just kind of like,
Yeah, you don't know where he's at.
I have no idea. I have no idea if he's if it's just lip service or if it's not, and if it, but I have seen him. There was one point in my life, where he did show up for me, and it was really fucking amazing, and it was really the bond that we had even in that short amount of time, was really phenomenal, and I would absolutely love for that to be a possibility. So I would say that if I'm going to go and have meet up with him, it would be to see if that that version of him is available. That's go ahead. Come on.
If it isn't, are you still okay having gone and met him?
Yeah, I have 100 conversations a week. Like, if it's not okay, then he's still in the same spot and he's him. And like Jay was just saying, like he's still living in his unconscious aspects of his life, and I am not going to be I cannot be the messenger for everyone, right? I had a conversation this last weekend with a really powerful coach. She coaches at the very top level, and she's been working with her son day in and day out. And it's, and she was super struggling with the fact that her son was not getting it. I was like, and sometimes we're not the messenger, right? And her attachment to the outcome with her son was completely sidelining all of the work that she was doing, because she had something that she wanted to have happen. And so if I can go to my dad to say, hey, I'm open to this, this is what I would love for to happen, without any attachment of does it happen or not, then why not? The only thing that can happen is if I don't, do I hold on to that belief or thought of a missed opportunity when he does pass? Right? Better to know.
What just dawned on me right now is 3 out of 4 of us, our fathers have transitioned. Yet we chose a topic on Dad, are you listening?
Mm.
So for those men and women that may be watching live or on replay that have a parent, whether it be a dad or a mom, that is no longer alive, how can we create a new relationship, a healthy relationship? Is it possible on the other side? Now, I don't know if either one of you have experienced that or not, but for me, the gateway was forgiveness, because by the time my dad transitioned, I just started on my own journey of healing. I wasn't in it long enough to really have the wisdom and the understanding that I have today. So I've done some work with my father on the other side. And the reason I chose to do that is twofold. One is so that my dad can rest in peace. Because I do believe that until he knew that I was at peace with our relationship, he would not be able to rest in peace. And the second reason, my second motive or intention, was because I wanted to set myself free of all of that inner anger and sadness and pain that I've been carrying for most of my life. And so for me, the gateway was the true essence of forgiveness. And for me, forgiveness is accepting that our parents make choices based on their own limitations. We put our parents on a pedestal when we're young children. And many of us never take our parents off that pedestal until either we or they transition. And that pedestal can be really confusing at times because, on one hand, they're our parent. But on the other hand, when we start to see the flaws, their flaws, and we start to see the cracks in their foundation, once our brain starts to mature enough to be able to understand what we're witnessing, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, until that moment, our parents are still on that pedestal. And then we go into an inner conflict or rage around what we're seeing as the truth and being angry at our parents for that. And the reality is the truth, at least for me and my dad, was my dad never intentionally wanted to hurt me. He just had limitations in how to love me or how to show love to me. It wasn't easy for my dad.
I have two
But
things.
I'm at peace today. Because I accept that as his truth. I know that. He never, ever wanted to hurt me or my sister or even my mom, who's still alive. He did the best with his limitations. And so that's how I embraced my father, to forgive him, is to let go of the memories that created the pain and really, really hold on to the memories that I saw when I saw my father enjoy. That's how I think of my father. That is how I have this new relationship with my father. So those moments, even last week or two ago, when I was on a pickleball court and a tennis court, not trying to see, but stepping in to see how my body would respond, coming off of rest for 5 weeks at that time. I tell you what, when I made those volleys, I celebrated the same exact way that I watched my dad do it on a court.
Hmm.
I had the consciousness that he was there with me.
Yeah.
What a gift. What a gift. What do you make of it, Kamala? What are you hearing right now?
That it's never too late. It's the main takeaway I get from that.
Yeah.
And that it actually can happen. That there's an actual reality that can occur where there is peace between us. Because, I mean, I don't feel at peace with it right now.
And that's okay, Kamala. There, just having the awareness that you don't feel peace right now is it's a gift in a way. Just having that awareness, the gift is knowing that you can change your relationship with that, with your dad. And so what I want to do with what time we have left, believe it or not, we have about 10 minutes to the hour. And I want to respect all of our time this evening. Viewers, I do want to, again, thank you for joining us tonight. If you have any questions for us, please drop them into the comment section. But with what time we have left, I want to challenge each one of you gentlemen this evening based on the title. Dad, are you listening? I want to invite you to spend about 2.5 minutes or so speaking to your dad, whether he's alive or not, whether he's in your life or not. I want to invite you to ask your dad, are you listening? and then share with him right here, right now, what you'd like him to hear. You each got 2.5 minutes. Chris, you're up first, brother. Before you go there, I'm going to drop back in here. I want to just invite each one of you not to come from your head, not to come from your head or your ego. Come from your heart. Dad, are you listening? You're up, Mr. Morrison.
Dad, are you listening? Because if you are, I'd love to see the version of you that I saw. I'd love to see a relationship with you like we had the opportunity to. And I am open to that. And I'm hoping for that. And if you're not, I love you no matter what. And I see you because I know the hurts that you lived through. And how hard it is to come to a place of peace through all of those labels, wounds, disrespects, pains. I know how hard it is to make it through those things. And guys of your generation didn't have the opportunity to have these conversations in a safe way. So Dad, if you're listening, I'm here for you.
Beautiful, Chris. Yeah, I just want to say this to you. I'm proud of you. Receive it here. I am proud of the man you've evolved into and continue to evolve into. We met a couple of years ago, man. You're in a very different place. You continue to grow. You continue to expand, seek. And I see the changes in you. I see you. And I am proud of you. You keep showing up for that boy within you and for your children. Because they deserve to have a dad that listens to them too.
They do. They've got one. I am the best father for Asher and Oliver that there is. There is no separation there. Thank you, Nancy.
All right. Pierce, you're up. You got 2 minutes. Dad, are you listening?
Are you listening? I'm sorry for never acknowledging how afraid you were, how much burden you carried. And I'm sorry I never asked you, how are you feeling, Dad? That I cared more about my fucking story than you. Thank you for giving me the gift of being an empath, because I figured that out at the end of your life, how sensitive and tender and gentle you are on the inside. But all I saw was the armor. Thank you for your humor and your goofiness, because I have that now too. And your courage and resilience and work ethic is what has made me successful. And that lives on. You live on inside of me. That is your legacy. I am your legacy. And I believe in you now. Thank you, Dad.
Pierce,
Yeah.
how do you feel right now?
Whew, a little lit up. A little sad. There's more to reveal around what I want to say to him. And this was very powerful. When I journey and do my work, my shaman asked me, you have to talk to your mom and dad up there. And I'm like, they're the last people I want to talk to right now. And now I want to be up there in the conversation with them, because I was willing to give them my story, even though it's right and I can back it up with facts. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
I had to bring that whole, and that's where I was suffering, is I wasn't bringing it whole. My mom was psychic, but I was the only one who knew. My dad was empathic, but he wasn't allowed to be. Those are my two greatest gifts now. We had to go through a little hell to get there.
Yeah.
I picked the perfect parents.
Something you said just hit me, like right here. When you said, Dad, I never asked you how you're doing.
Yeah. I never asked him how he felt. I was afraid to find out. And he didn't. I never experienced him having them until the end of his life. So getting close represented fear, because I didn't know if he was going to start swinging or not, or yelling. But it was at the end of his life I really saw that little boy and how afraid he was inside. And when I was his power of attorney, and he had a heart attack literally right in front of me, but it took 2 days for symptoms to show up because his armor is so tight. And I navigated him out of the ICU back at home because he wanted to die at home. And I pitched another perfect game in the bottom of the ninth. And I realized I was still pitching a perfect game for this man. But what I also realized is that he put me in that position because he knew I'd make all the right decisions, and he trusted me. That was his way of saying it, but he would never say it verbally. And I'm grateful that I do the work, because I needed to see that. Because what's showing up just this past 2 weeks is I started mistrusting myself again. So now I have that validation. That's why it's so important for fathers to validate their son for how they show up, not just what they do, but how they show up. You have to reinforce the being. And so, yeah, it was powerful for him to put his life in my hands, and I knew exactly how to navigate it, and I did. But that's when I'm at my best, is when shit hits the fan.
There you go.
Yeah.
Pierce, I want to take a moment here just to acknowledge you and thank you for stepping into tonight's episode 192. I appreciate
I
you.
love being,
What's that?
I said I really loved being here.
Thank you.
It's easy to be vulnerable when you're with guys that know how to be vulnerable. Like, just it.
Oh.
Sunwolf says, what questions you asked, compelling, moved me, and you're honoring your dad no matter what, and saw the gifts you received. What a way to go full circle. Wow, bravo. He's referring to your comments there, Pierce. And welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Kamalo, I've stalled as long as I can. But now it's your turn. Dad, if you're listening, what do you want him to hear from you right now?
Dad, if you're listening, I hope you know I love you. And I miss you. I miss the way we used to just play when I was a kid. Go for walks and skip around and be silly. I hope that the pain, and there's a lot of pain in our family, I know. I hope that that doesn't continue to get in the way of us having a closeness with each other. And I hope both of us can find the time and space to work through these stories we have with each other.
Wow.
Because it really doesn't matter whose truth is the right truth anymore. I don't care. I want to have a relationship with you that feels real again. Not one that's based on what you can do for me and how I can listen to you. And again, I just want to say that I love you very much. And if you're willing, I'd love to work it out with you.
Beautiful. What a beautiful words that you've just expressed here, Kamalo. And like I said to Chris, I'll say it to you, I'm also extremely proud of you. I don't know
Sure.
you as long as I know Chris, but just in the time that we have met and developed this very intimate relationship of love, honor, respect, hearing each other. Are you listening? Asking the questions. You're a beautiful young man, and you have so much for your dad to be proud of.
Thank you.
I do want to share a comment that was shared here by one of our viewers. Viewer says, "I am in tears as she was listening to you speak, Kamalo. And though I am a woman, I was able to relate and speak to my grandfather, my father, and a few of my ex-male partners. Thanks for the healing. Powerful." And this is why we do the show. We do the show to inspire other men and women that we have infinite possibilities to change the trajectory of our relationships outside of ourselves, but most importantly, the relationship within ourselves. That is where it all begins. In order to forgive others, in order to love others in a most authentic, vulnerable way, it takes having the courage to come home to yourself first, to return to love of self, to forgive yourself for all the things that were said, for all the things that weren't said, for all the choices that we made to do or not do that impacted others, but most importantly, impacted the quality of our own life. I will end this by saying, Dad, if you're listening, I know you're listening. I feel you every single day. It comes through. I've never said this before. But I'm proud of you, Dad.
Mm.
I wouldn't be the man I am today if you hadn't impacted my life. So thank you for that. I love you, Dad.
Beautiful.
Wow. You can't make this shiitake up, brothers. This is what being a real man is about. It's having the courage to get out of your freaking head and open your heart to feel, reveal, express, and honor. And if someone isn't willing to receive it, then you say adios. That's okay. Love them from a distance. Viewers, if you heard something that you liked or loved, please share it out with your friends and family. Share out the show on YouTube, where all 192 episodes are archived by title. There's a lot to watch. There's a lot to listen. There's a lot to embrace so that we can grow and heal together as one. And with that, viewers, hopefully we'll see you next week on episode. Hold on. I got to put this one up there. Jay, this brought tears to my eyes. Acknowledging your dad no matter what, and seeing and feeling the value. That's what life is about.
Yeah.
It is about everything we talked about tonight and then some. We probably could do a part 2 and still not cover it all. But in this moment, I want to respect all of our time. So viewers, thank you for joining us this evening. Again, share it out, and look forward to catching you next week on our next episode of Real Men, Real Talk.